Edward's Wacky Wonders was the sign, pasted on every window anyone with a heartbeat could lay their eyes on. It was supposed to be the biggest freak show amusement event Wayward County ever saw. Tickets sold out in a mere 10 minutes, quicker than ice cream in the summer sun. Every kid there in the town over wanted to have front row seats, especially Sean's kids, Emily and Aaron. They'd been good at chores, saying their yes ma'ams and no sirs, even saving up a little here and there, enough to afford them both a ticket to the show. And boy, was it going to be a show unlike any other. The sign on the barbershop window said so. Some oddball campground in the middle of nowhere was set for the big event. A few acres of tents erected here and there, spirals striped red and white. The line leading into the main tent was long. Again, everyone and their grandmother was here. Every parent knows that mixing kids in long lines is a scenario asking for trouble. Most kids can't stand still. Luckily, there was enough entertainment outside the big top. Jugglers, balloon artists, you name it. A contortionist was bent up like a pretzel. The angles were unnatural. Emily and Aaron had a laugh. You could see people wincing in pain, as if they were twisted up in a tangle too. Sean didn't blame them. It looked pretty painful. The line shrunk, and eventually, they were inside. The kids thought the place was even bigger than it looked from the outside. Sean thought the same. Things like this are designed to mess with your senses, almost bend them. You can't rely on perception. Sean took Aaron and Emily to the bathroom. Afterwards, they grabbed some drinks and found their seats and marked on their tickets. They were pretty good seats, not front row, but pretty close. The show started as they all usually did, had you ever been to one. Dim the lights, cue the loud announcer, here comes the first of many entertaining oddities and freaks of nature. Enjoy the show. There were acrobats flying and flipping back and forth 50 feet in the air, the famous lion tamer having lions jump through hoops of fire, and of course, clowns. Can't have a circus without clowns. Except, these were no ordinary clowns doing ordinary clown things, as Sean would soon find out. There was something else going on. Something vile, and it seemed nobody but Sean noticed until it was too late. A tiny Volkswagen Beetle rolled into the middle of the stage. An impossible amount of clowns piled out of the cab. Sean counted 15. One held a club, another an axe. The rest were chained up like prisoners in a chain gang. The one holding the axe appeared to be giving order to the one with the club, pointing somewhere in the darkness beyond the light on the stage, somewhere nobody could really see. The clown dragged out a table to the middle of the stage. That's when the ones who were chained made a line before it. The clown with the axe made a loud grunting noise to the one with the club, pointing at the first in the line, then making a chopping gesture with his axe. Something wasn't right here. Surely it's theater, dark humor, Sean thought, peering down at Emily, who was covering her mouth, Aaron just clapping away in excitement. Then the club came down, thumping off the back of the clown's head almost cartoonishly. The clown with the club rested his hands on the top of his head, almost in a worried fashion. Everyone started laughing, but Sean still felt something wasn't right. The clown ragdolled to the floor, dragged to the side by another clown to make way for the next. Round two, but the clown with the club seemed to hold a little longer this time before striking down. The one with the axe seemed upset, making that grunt he had previously, then pushing the clown to the side. Sean knew what was coming. He couldn't help but cover his kid's eyes, and he's glad he did, because when the axe came down and following it the clown's head, rolling off the table with a few jets of blood, everyone started screaming and cleared the stands. Bullies get on my nerves. They just take their insecurities out on others, and it's pretty obvious. There was a new kid at our school, the newest punching bag on the block for these secretly fragile ambassadors of harassment and name-calling. The new kid wore clown clothes, suspenders, spotted t-shirts, even a bow tie. Of course, I thought it was weird, but I just assumed maybe he liked Insane Clown Posse or something. During lunch, I'd always see him sitting all by himself. I don't think he ever brought his own lunch, nor did I ever see him in the cafeteria line. I felt terrible for the kid. Who wouldn't? I remember when my parents moved because my father got a new job. It sucked. When you're the new kid on the block, it's awkward. I guess I could empathize with him, is what I'm trying to get at here. One day I introduced myself to him and found out his name was Clay. Then I started routinely sharing lunch with him for a while. I came up with the idea of going over to his house one day. He didn't seem open to it, but he didn't say no. He just said he'd get back to me on it. Something felt off about that entire conversation, and now I was thinking his whole family was probably weird. Who knows what I'd be walking into if I actually went over to his house. I just wanted him to feel like he had a friend. The next day during lunch, Clay told me his parents were cool with it, though he had this reluctant sound in his voice, almost like he was hoping they'd say no. The plan was to go over on Friday for dinner, giving me enough time to make sure my parents were cool with it as well, which I knew they would be. Friday rolled around and I ended up riding the bus home with him. The ride was pretty short, maybe 20 minutes. He was one of the earlier stops on the driver's bus route. We stopped in a pretty crappy neighborhood. It definitely wasn't one of those bougie ones with the fancy cars with 4 garages, though I can't say that's what I was expecting. His house looked pretty old. It made me wonder what his parents did for a living. Maybe something blue collar? Clay had keys to the house. He'd unlocked the front door and we went inside. He yelled out to his mom and dad, letting them know we had arrived. I heard his mother yell from what I guessed was the kitchen, telling us that dinner was ready. When we walked in, I nearly soiled myself. They were dressed like clowns. I'm talking from head to toe, like their 9 to 5 was the circus. Red noses, suspenders, dotted shirts, even oversized shoes and fluffed collars. What in the world? As we were eating, I tried not to stare, but couldn't help myself. Clay looked completely embarrassed the entire time. Then I understood why he acted strange when we were talking about me coming over during school lunch. When dinner was done, his father honked his nose and gave a chuckle, rising from his seat at the end of the table and nodding to his wife. She stood up and gave me a hard stare, then said, "Ready for a show?" What did I get myself into? It's been years since the incident. It was around 2015 when it happened. There had been an uptick in clown sightings across the country. You couldn't go on social media of any kind without seeing a video of someone getting stopped in their car because some a-hole in a clown costume was blocking the way. It seemed like one big trend to get views, but my experience was raw terror. I was prepping for a 20-mile trail run fundraiser coming up in the coming months. My routine was a daily 15-mile run on a trail I'd picked out. I'd get up around 6 while it's still pretty cool, and run until 8-ish. The trail goes about 30 miles, which is pretty long. There was still a bit of it that I hadn't gone down, and I thought that I'd maybe run a few extra miles one day, just for the pleasure of how beautiful it all was. So I did. I'd pretty much ran my 15 miles, and I was on good timing. The sun was barely up, the breeze was cool, the birds were singing, and the trees were dancing. Days like that are what it's all about. It was a good day to run a little longer. I didn't know how much further I'd run, just thought I would go until it felt right to stop. Some of the run is uphill, but not too bad. Only time trail runs suck is if the ground is a little soft from the rain. Running in the mud is no fun. It makes your legs work double time. It also gets you dirty and ruins your shoes. At this point of the run, I'd just gotten over the top of a major incline when I saw someone way off down the other side ahead of me. As I got closer, not slowing my pace, I noticed they never moved. They were almost petrified, frozen in time. I started to make out their features. That's when I was startled. It was a clown. I wondered why there'd be a clown out here. I was miles into a trail. Surely they didn't get here by foot. I didn't see a car or a bike though. When I got within 10 feet of the guy, I stopped. Still, they never moved. I tried to make conversation, but they never spoke. Didn't even blink. Worst of all, they were holding something behind their back. I could see red streaks and dots along their ruffled collar and suspenders. I thought it was paint, but then I realized something wasn't right. Clown in the middle of nowhere acting super weird, hand behind their back, red splatter on their costume. I ran, and that's when the chase began. I'd heard of the clown sighting stuff for a while. Never did I think any of it was real, or at the very least dangerous. But here I was, in the middle of nowhere, being chased by some lunatic who either truly wanted to kill me or just got a good slap on the knee, scaring the living crap out of me. I was ahead of him pretty consistently. My heart was absolutely pounding, as hard as the drummer John Bonham from the band Led Zeppelin. The guy must have been a runner too, because we'd probably run a mile and he didn't seem to lose his pace. Some way into the run, I decided to go off trail. It was a completely idiotic decision, seeing as I was miles deep in the woods with no signal or GPS. I was afraid for my life, so I guess that's enough justification. I couldn't seem to gain on him, and before I knew it, I was reaching my limit physically. I couldn't run any longer, just couldn't. I made a break for a large rock that I felt I could climb, maybe get some high ground, enough of an advantage with the best chances to live if it were to come down to a fight. Soon he was stabbing at me. I tried kicking him in the jaw, but missed. That's when he made contact with my ankle, and when he did, a surge of shock pulsed through me. I thought my leg had gone numb because I couldn't feel the pain anymore. He started laughing, and I looked down at him. He was stabbing his hand with the knife. But it wasn't a knife. It was one of those spring-loaded plastic toys you get at a prank store. He gave me one final laugh and ran off. I would be lying if I said I tried to go after him. I don't think my heart had any juice left in it. I was just happy to be alive. I still think about the red splatter on his clothes. Was it blood? Or was it all part of the show? I'd like to believe the latter.